A very, very long time ago, a human king opened a gate to another world. The world beyond it was the demon realm, and the moment that gate opened, monsters poured into the human world without end. Cities burned, many people died. With his kingdom drowning in blood, the king prayed to the gods and begged for the power to drive the monsters away. Then a radiant light fell from the sky. The monsters dissolved into black smoke. Special symbols appeared on certain humans, and those symbols granted mysterious powers. At last, humanity had people who could fight back. They revered these warriors and called them mages, and peace returned to the world. That is the old story anyway. Whether the gods truly answered the king or something else did is another question entirely. As if the tale itself is warning us not to trust the easy answer. A pale blonde child stands alone in a vast stone chamber surrounded by bones. A pale-haired man watches from the entrance, sweating as the child's clear blue eyes rise to meet his. Much later, beneath a sky with 2 moons, a ballroom full of nobles is preparing to hear Saren the singer perform. Saren, however, is preparing to leave. She was promised a gathering of mages and got a room full of nobles instead, so she loudly calls them disgusting, while her attendant begs her to remember that they have ears. The only reason Saren came was the chance to meet the Black Mage. Now she plans to sing one song and go home. Nearby, guests mention a monster warning in Lufin Forest and a carriage that was attacked there. Yet the party rolls on as if the danger belongs to somebody else. Saren finds that pathetic. Then it is time for her performance. The guests turn toward the stage, eager to hear the heavenly voice they have heard so much about. Saren faces them, opens her mouth and stops. She has not sung a note, but the entire audience looks terrified. One glance behind her explains why. Monsters have entered the ballroom. Screams swallow the music before it can begin, and nobles stampede for the exits, while one creature closes in on Saren. Her attendant shouts her name. The monster lunges. A black-haired young man steps between them with a long dark staff in his hand. Black and blue-white magic tears through the creature, and he does not pause to admire the result. He turns on the rest. One monster falls, then another, and the few still standing are erased before they can reach the fleeing guests. By the time the hall goes quiet, shattered debris and dark residue are all that remain of the attack. Saren's attendant rushes over to check her, but Saren is staring past her. She knows that black cloak. She knows that magic. It is him, the Black Mage. The guests recognize him moments later, whispering that he is famous in Ophion, and that he saved many lives on that day. Saren barely hears them. The man she came hoping to see is walking straight toward her. He asks if she is hurt, and Saren, who had no trouble insulting an entire ballroom, suddenly needs 2 attempts to say she is fine. He says that is good, then apologizes for asking at a time like this and says he needs one favor. Saren tells him he can ask for anything. He reaches into his clothes, pulls out a sheet and pen, and holds them toward her. "Could I get an autograph?" Saren stares at him. "An autograph?" He points to the empty space. When she asks if that is really all he wants, he calmly adds, "Ah, and your name too." By the time the Black Mage returns through Ophion's main gate, people are already closing in. Some want to hear about his latest mission. The rest simply want his attention. He keeps moving because crowds are exactly why he hates going outside in this form, but escape becomes impossible when an orange-haired woman spots him. Rue, no blow. Ren catches herself before the wrong name reaches the wrong ears and asks whether he is here to report to their master. Blow confirms it and calls the assignment depressing, which is a fair description for any mission that ends with Saren's autograph in his hand. He suggests they eat later, then Ren drops a leaflet as he walks away. Blow picks it up and finds his own hooded face printed across the page. Ophion is advertising the Black Mage without his permission. Ren swears she opposed the idea. That is all Blow needs to hear. He marches into the master's office and slams the leaflet onto the desk, interrupting a perfectly peaceful cup of tea. The master takes one look at the evidence, hides it, and cheerfully announces that it has disappeared. Blow is not impressed. The man already forces him to enter Ophion as the Black Mage, where strangers surround him at every step. Advertising him without permission turns that misery into a business plan. The master calls him Ophion's shy superstar, then notices the autograph and forgets the argument entirely. Blow actually completed the mission. Yes, he secured Saren's signature during a monster attack, and no, he will not be doing anything like it again. That rules out the master's other precious assignments, including Ellen's missing puppy and Roan's love letter. While admiring Saren's autograph, the master remarks that she has a prickly reputation. Blow says she seemed more shaken than prickly after monsters attacked the party. The smile leaves the master's face. Saren is active in Ravi, a safe zone protected by the tower. The mid-sized monsters were not especially strong, but they should never have reached that city in the first place. That is the real problem, and the master agrees it needs to be investigated. Naturally, he still praises Blow for finishing the autograph mission during the attack. Blow reminds him who created that mission, and ends the celebration. The master changes subjects and asks how long he plans to stay like that. Then he calls him rude. "My name is Blow. Awaken, Release, dark blue magic winds around him. His black hair turns pale blonde, and the taller black mage changes into Rude's shorter appearance. The master studies him for a moment and asks whether he has grown taller. Rude almost checks before remembering that he came here for a proper mission. This time, the master does not joke. Since that day, ordinary people and mages alike have been watching Rude, and the association is actively searching for him. Every public appearance makes his position more dangerous. Rudd silently points at the stack of black mage advertisements sitting beside the man delivering this warning. There are even more copies than he feared. The master moves on quickly. 3 times a year, an auction is held for rare and unusual items. Ophion has learned that a named, top-grade magic stone will appear at the next one, and plenty of other mages have received the same information. At last, this sounds like a real mission. After Rude leaves, the master pulls out the one document he could not show him. It is an admission letter addressed to Rude Chrissy, age 15. He passed the basic test, met the entry requirements, and has already been admitted to Helios Magic School. Sweat beads across the master's face as he reads it again. He'll be really mad, won't he? The auction opens in Raiden before a hall packed with spectators, mages, and people who definitely did not come merely to bid. Rude watches from a private booth beside Ren, hidden beneath a dark hood in his smaller, pale blonde appearance. Most of the hall is waiting for Shazan's heart, a rare top-grade magic stone. Rude is hunting a man. The master called the assignment Vengeance Delivery. Its target is Dan Marcel, better known as Cloaky, a third-class mage accused of ruining the client's life while repeatedly slipping past the law. Rude had one sensible question. "You aren't asking me to kill him, are you?" The master said no. Death would be far too simple. Rude would find Cloaky, capture him, and then, in front of the entire auction, take off his pants. Somehow, murder was easier to hear. The master explained that Cloaky is rumored to have belonged to Kodal, an old criminal organization that Raiden still despises. Kodal members supposedly branded an emblem onto their legs with Lemon's venom, leaving a mark that could never be removed. If Cloaky has one, exposing it here would give the client exactly the revenge they requested. Rude pointed out the obvious problem. The Kodal connection is only a rumor. What happens if they strip Cloaky in public and find nothing? The master only smiled. Even with no mark, a public stripping still counted as revenge. Back in the booth, Rude is no closer to accepting this mission as a reasonable use of his life. Ren promises they will find a way, which comforts neither of them. Across the hall, an energetic princess is having a much better time. Her green-haired attendant reminds her that they came to observe, not play, but she is certain something exciting will happen. She turns to share that excitement with Tessie, and finds Lady Tessiana asleep in her chair. Nearby, a blonde boy named Lapis nearly drifts off too, until his father orders him to watch the gathered mages carefully. Then there is CK. His brown-haired companion keeps stressing that their job is to guard the magic stone, not destroy it. CK plucks leaves and mutters, "Coming, not coming." When the lecture continues, he calls his companion an old man. The companion objects. CK plucks the final leaf and says, "It's coming." Right on cue, the auctioneer unveils the item everyone came to see. Beneath the cover rests a radiant red-orange stone, announced as the finest magic stone infused with the power of the great Shazan's heart. The hall erupts, but Ren keeps her eyes on Rude. Has he found Cloaky? Not yet. Too many mages are packed together, and their energy is blurring into one noisy mass. Rude suggests that Cloaky may not have come. Ren tells him to stop avoiding reality. Fine. If he cannot isolate the target yet, he can at least prepare for the moment Cloaky shows himself. Ren closes the curtain around their booth as dark blue magic gathers around Rude. "My name is Blow." Awakened, pale blonde hair turns black. His smaller figure stretches into the taller black mage known throughout Ophion, and Ren watches the change with the same amazement as always. Mages whose appearances shift this way are incredibly rare. She looks him over and asks the only question currently bothering her. How does a little kid turn into such a dashing young man? Sorry for being a brat. Blow's answer wipes the grin from Ren's face, though only long enough for her to insist she was joking and ask whether he has enough mana. He does, but the auction floor has already taken his attention. 2 armed raiders crash through the guards around Shazan's heart and announce that the stone belongs to them. One blasts the security line apart with purple magic, while the other pushes through the opening, scattering ordinary guards before either man reaches the display. A beast-eared mage in an ornate blue robe grabs the first raider's arm. Magic surges through the limb, and the man drops his sword while screaming that he cannot move. His companion recognizes the association robe, but the crowd recognizes the mage himself. Animal ears, a tail, and a temper famous enough to have its own warning label. This is Lenost's Hound, and unfortunately, Hound is the one name he cannot stand. The instant a bystander says it aloud, he demands to know who called him that and unloads his anger on both thieves. One manages to strike back, prompting Hound to calmly mention that the attack hurt before putting both raiders down. Ren had mistaken the auction guards for scarecrows, but the association hid a serious fighter among them. Blow tells her to look carefully, because he remembers Hound standing beside him on that day. Ren's eyes widen. Then could it be? Hound turns to address the hall before she can finish, warning every mage to behave until the auction ends. Anyone who reaches for the rare stone or acts suspiciously will answer to him. It is a powerful warning delivered one moment too late. Shazan's heart is gone. Someone points above the hall, where Seek stands on a massive stone figure with the glowing stone in one hand while his brown-haired companion shouts from below. They were assigned to guard it, and Seek has apparently chosen the most aggressive interpretation possible. He ignores the lecture and searches the crowd, certain that Blackie is here. If Blackie wants the stone, Seek tells him to come take it. Otherwise, he will devour it himself. Ren slowly turns toward Blow and asks the question sitting on her face. That Blackie, is he talking about you? Blow does not give her the satisfaction of an answer, admitting only that the mission has become more complicated. Ren suggests leaving before CK turns the auction into a battlefield, but Blow will not abandon Vengeance Delivery because of one dust-like nuisance. Around them, mages who arrived ready to fight for Shazan's heart decide they have suddenly lost interest. CK is on another level, and one spectator claims the Black Mage may be the only person in the hall capable of facing him. That is precisely the person CK wants. He taunts Blackie for hiding while his companion orders him to come down, earning the poor man another old man for his trouble. Hound threatens to show CK hell and launches a huge golden attack. Before the clash can settle anything, a blue-white sword strike tears across the hall and breaks it apart. The light clears to reveal Tessiana with her blade drawn. Hound demands to know whether she interfered, and Tessiana replies that she came to participate fairly in the auction. She even brought 1 silver coin. Somebody asks what she expects to buy with a single silver, but Tessiana is no longer listening. Siki got in her way. He calls her crazy, and she corrects him without hesitation. He is the one in her way. Ren has no idea why the woman who slept through the auction has chosen now to wake up, but her timing is excellent. As Tessiana turns her sword on CK, Ren quietly cheers her on and asks about their real target. Blow scans the crowd displaced by the fighting, until his eyes stop on the smiling man in purple. Dan Marcel. Cloquet. I found him. Before Blow can move on Cloquet, Tessiana charges CK and drives a blue-white strike into his red magic, ripping through the auction floor and burying both fighters in smoke. Tessiana walks out furious rather than injured, demanding to know why nobodies keep crawling out of nowhere to ruin her day. CK answers with another red vortex, and she raises her sword. My name is Tessiana. Awakening, blue-white energy floods around her as the next collision shakes the hall, but CK only asks whether she truly believes awakening will change anything. Tessiana tells him to prepare himself, and attacks again. A delighted spectator shouts for Tessie, while the princess enjoys every second of the destruction, leaving her green-haired attendant to suffer through the worst secret outing of his career. Tessiana was brought to guard the princess, not duel seek, and they already slipped away without permission. If the princess is injured, the attendant loses his position, so he starts escorting her out while she protests. Everyone else receives a simpler order. Evacuate. Guests surge toward the exits as Tessiana and CK exchange another destructive blow, and Shazan's heart slips from CK during the chaos before vanishing into the fleeing crowd. His brown-haired companion forces his way through the evacuees, furious that CK started a fight without handing over the stone first. Blow leaves the treasure hunt to them, because his eyes are on Cloquet, and the confusion has handed him the opening he needed. He still has to expose the possible codal mark on Cloquet's leg, without walking up and tearing off a grown man's pants. The fact that he is seriously considering how to do this is reason enough to curse the master. Blow finds another way by approaching a blue-haired attendee, pointing to Cloquet's purple clothes, and claiming the man hid Shazan's heart in his pants. The accusation crosses the hall in seconds, and people seize Cloquet to perform exactly the public search Blow wanted. Then, Cloquet draws his blade and cuts down the first man who reaches him. How did they figure it out? Blow freezes because he invented the entire accusation, but Cloquet answers the question by revealing Shazan's heart. He really stole it. Now that the stone is in his hands, Cloquet declares that he will never surrender it. My name is Cloquet. Awakening. Purple projectiles gather around him as he threatens to kill anyone who covets his prize. Then he fires into the crowd. Blow steps between them. Oh, really? Black magic tears through the barrage, and Blow reaches Cloquet before a second attack can form. One strike drives him into the floor. Cloquet starts to protest. Unlikely. The hall goes still, as everyone recognizes the black magic, and the man standing over him, the Black Mage. Even Hound stares. Cloak clutches the stolen stone and insists it belongs to him, leaving Blow with one very reasonable question. And why exactly is it yours? You stole it. Cloak still refuses to let go, but Blow never wanted the stone. I'm not after the mana stone. I'm after you. Red power swells behind him before he can finish vengeance delivery. A sword flashes through the vortex, catching Blow by surprise, and Seek closes the remaining distance in an instant. He leans into Blow's face with a smile. "Hello, Blackie." The greeting lasts less than a second before red and black magic explode between Seek and Blow. Their collision tears through the auction floor, cracks the building around them, and sends the guests who were still watching straight toward the exits. Tessiana gets caught in the blast, loses her sword, and admits that the attack hurts. Still, she promises she will not lose next time. Clokey is already using the destruction to run with Shazam's heart. Several mages chase him, but he sweeps the weaker ones aside with purple magic, and calls them minnows. That confidence survives until a stronger mage strikes back, and reminds Clokey that he is not the biggest fish in this haul. Above the ruined floor, the crowd finally names the two men responsible for most of the damage. The black mage is fighting Seek Muon. Lapis hears those names and knows the building may collapse, so he asks his pale-haired attendant Rune where his father went. His father already escaped. Lapis knows he should follow him, but a battle between two famous mages is happening directly below. Common sense loses. Ren is not enjoying the show nearly as much. CK and the association were never part of this supposedly easy mission, and she left the mana orb behind. Now every minute Blow spends wasting mana makes her more nervous. Blow knows that too. He tells CK that he has no intention of fighting him. Blow is not here for the stone, and CK's side came to guard it, so they can mind their own business. While they are at it, CK can remove the ridiculous red magic circle gathering above his head. Seek asks whether Blow dislikes it, but he does not care about the answer. He has searched for Blow since that day, chasing every mission and incident where the black mage might appear, because Ophion kept hiding him like treasure. Yet Blow was never there. Well, our boy has been busy signing autographs and pulling off pants. Now that Seek finally has him standing here, he wants only one thing. Show me again. Whatever Seek saw on that day gave him chills, and he wants to see it once more before killing Blow. Seek attacks before Blow can reject him again. Red and black magic rip through another section of the hall, sending huge slabs of stone toward the people below. Seeki's brown-haired companion knocks the debris away with an orange-gold strike, and curses Seiki for trying to bury everyone alive. He also notices that Seiki has become unusually talkative. The man is having far too much fun, while his companion is left protecting civilians, searching for the missing stone, and wondering how anyone will explain this disaster. Across the hall, Clokey's escape is getting worse. More mages surround him and demand Shazam's heart, but the rumor Blow started has taken on a life of its own. Someone shouts that the mana stone is hidden inside Clokey's pants, and suddenly an armed crowd is chasing his trousers instead of the treasure. Clokey screams that the story is nonsense, and runs faster. Blow leaves them to it and directs nearby civilians toward the exits. He will not waste mana entertaining CK, especially when this man may be the reason Master has buried him under absurd missions since that day. Vengeance delivery is nearly ruined, but Blow still needs to learn whether Clokey carries the Codal mark. Seek sees him looking away, and decides the remaining people are distractions. If clearing the hall will make Blow fight, then Seiki is ready to clear it himself. The red geometric circle expands across the ceiling, and even the mages chasing Clokey finally look up. Clokey tries to escape in the panic, but Blow knocks him down and blocks his path. Then the black mage faces everyone still fighting over Shazam's heart. If you value your lives, leave the mana stone and get out. This place might collapse at any moment. CK's companion storms toward him beneath the giant red circle, and orders him to stop before one more attack can kill everyone still trapped inside. CK says nothing, while Ren moves through the wreckage with a teleport scroll in hand, and an ominous feeling in her stomach. She wants to find Blow and leave immediately. Clokey meanwhile has decided the rumors about the black mage were lies. He thinks Blow ordered the evacuation so he could steal Shazam's heart, and Blow can hardly believe what he is hearing. People really do see whatever they want to see. Blow ignores the accusation and asks a more useful question. Does Clokey belong to Codal? The moment Blow names the organization, Clokey freezes and stammers out a denial. Blow reminds him that he carries a substantial bounty, and chose the worst possible city in which to show his face. The denial is loud, but the panic behind it interests Blow more, so he decides to check the rumored legmark himself. Clokey immediately shoves Shazam's heart toward him as an offering and tells him to take it. Blow starts to refuse, and CK attacks before he finishes. CK has no interest in watching Blow deal with trash like Clokey. He wants Blackie to forget the stone, forget the mission, and play with him instead. Blow tries to talk, CK responds with red magic, and our boy gets the same answer when he tries again. Fine, Blow gathers his own energy to counter, and then it vanishes from his hand. Both mages stop as purple light spreads across the broken floor. One magic circle appears, then another, until circles cover the auction hall, and huge purple creatures rise from the smoke. Their crystalline bodies are covered in eyes, and the first one lunges straight into the surviving guests. Near the edge of the hall, Lapis demands a sword from Rune, He may not be strong enough to help, but standing there like an idiot will accomplish even less. Lapis charges, swings once, and gets swatted away by a single limb. Rune catches her young master before he hits the floor, puts him back on his feet, and studies the creature. Is it an ugly jellyfish or a giant octopus? Giant octopus is good enough. Golden magic gathers around Rune as she calls on absorption and mana arrow, then her counterattack slams into the monster. Back near Blow, Siki's companion looks at the creatures crawling from the purple circles and wonders whether they are summoning circles. He has never heard of a mage who can summon monsters, which makes the number of creatures filling the hall even worse. Before Blow can pursue the question, Ren finds him. He thought she had escaped, but Ren refuses to leave him without showing some loyalty. CK attacks again before either of them can move. His companion demands to know what happened to the Mana Stone, and CK raises an empty hand. It disappeared. That is enough auction madness for Ren. She opens the teleport scroll and orders Blow to leave with her, but CK refuses to let Blackie go. Blow catches his strike and demands to know why he is still fighting, while monsters tear through the hall. During the struggle, Blow feels his energy holding steady again, and asks whether Seek's magic also vanished a moment ago. Seek admits that it did. He knows Blow did not cause it, and even he finds these monsters strange, but none of that changes what he wants. Blow points out that whatever is happening here matters more than their fight. CK has his answer ready. I don't care. He swings again, Blow meets him head-on, and red and black power rip through the hall. Hound steps into CK's next attack, blocks it with his own body, and orders him to stop. CK only remarks that clingy men are not attractive, leaving Hound to ask what that has to do with anything. He keeps himself between the two mages, until CK orders the old man to move, and warns him not to interfere again. Ren has a more urgent problem. The tower's mages will arrive soon, and she wants Blow gone before Ophion is caught in the aftermath. She urges him to hurry, but a monster closes in behind her, before he can answer. Blow shouts a warning as Lapis rushes between them, lands one brave sword strike, and asks whether Ren is alright. Then the monster knocks him aside. Ren points out that her rescuer looks much worse than she does, and when Rune asks whether her young master needs help, Lapis finally screams that of course he does. Rune blasts the creature away, while Blow reaches Ren, and confirms that she is unharmed. The attacker is a low-tier monster with no core and no intelligence, which leaves Blow staring at the purple circles, and wondering what brought it here. His eyes drift back to Cloquet. Blow still has not confirmed the Kotal mark, but Ren is done with that stupid mission. A bad dream bothered her that morning, and she is very glad she brought the teleport scroll. Blow tells her to escape first. Ren stares at him. Are you seriously trying to take off his pants right now? Lapis turns toward them. Take off what? Rune answers pants. Blow denies it before this conversation can become any worse. Monsters are still attacking people throughout the hall, but the tower can handle them once its mages arrive. Since Lapis protected Ren, Blow offers him and Rune the 2 remaining places on the scroll, which can carry 4 people. Lapis accepts before Blow finishes speaking, then remembers that his own group has teleport scrolls too. Hound has his own problem. Just imagining the report for this disaster gives him a headache, and when he grabs CK to complain, CK answers with a close-range strike. Ren ignores both of them, and begins the activation. The location is where I desire. The condition is those who touch. Everyone grabs on, but CK sees Blow preparing to leave, and demands to know why he keeps running from him. Lapis notices the terrifying glare aimed at the black mage. Blow assures him that Seek is probably losing a staring contest, and Ren tells Blow to stop talking while she is trying to focus. Seek moves before the spell is complete. Red magic spreads across the hall as he curses Blackie, and Hound recognizes the same sudden disturbance in the hall's magic from moments earlier. Lapis feels it too. Ren struggles to hold the spell together while Blow shouts for her to finish. Blue-white light gathers around Ren, Blow, Lapis, and Rune. Teleport. The light swallows all 4 before Siki can reach them. A red-orange explosion then engulfs the auction building and throws fire into the night. Far from the burning hall, a long purple-haired stranger watches from the woods beside a small many-eyed creature. A purple magic circle floats over one hand. How amusing. The stranger closes that hand and sends a glowing faceted object toward a horned figure, reading beneath the trees. The horned figure catches it without closing the open book. Ruby Monter. Golden eyes remain fixed on the pages, as the object breaks into light in one hand. Amusing? Hardly. All that chaos over just one thing. Humans are such pitifully trivial creatures. Back at Ophion, Master reads that the auction building was destroyed. Shazan's heart vanished, and unidentified monsters appeared inside the hall. The farther he gets, the harder he laughs. Ren stares at him. You're laughing right now? She and Blow were sent to remove one man's pants, yet they returned safely from an auction that no longer has a building. Master insists that he really is relieved. If he had known Seek Muon would be there, he never would have sent them. Ren wants to know why Seek is so obsessed with Blow, because this fixation is far beyond a simple hunger for battle. Master can offer only one clue. That family has always had a bit of a crazy streak. Family? Master has no idea what they are thinking, but he expects their interest to fade with time. Until then, Ophion will keep avoiding them. Ren finally understands why Blow has been receiving so many ridiculous missions. Keeping him away from Seek was part of the reason, though Master also wanted Rude to rest. Then Master looks back at the report and stops smiling. Someone announced a high-grade magic stone at a public auction. Purple creatures appeared throughout the hall, and the gathered magic of 2 powerful mages vanished without warning. Both the association and the tower will investigate, and Ophion cannot ignore what happened either. Rude did not wait for that conversation. He handed in a half-hearted report and left before Ren could question him. And now our boy is sitting in a crowded cafe, with books and papers covering the table. Standard records contain nothing that matches the purple summoning circle. A green-haired server, named Ben, brings his drink over and marvels at the pile of books. He never knew Rude was this smart. Rude asks whether Ben is only noticing now, but Ben's sister taught him that people should remain humble. Rude changes the subject. Every customer is talking instead of eating, and Ben knows exactly why. They are discussing the exploits of the Black Mage. The story spreading through the city is wonderful. Wicked mages tried to steal an expensive stone. The Black Mage appeared, defeated all of them, and saved everyone. The actual Black Mage can only stare at Ben. Somehow the heroic version forgot that the entire auction building exploded. Ben still thinks it sounds incredible, and he hopes his sister can become a powerful mage too. She was recently admitted to Helios, a school Ben describes as a special place, reserved for the best of the best. He hates being separated from her, but he can always send letters whenever he misses her. Their mother told him not to distract his sister. Ben has already written 10. Someone calls him back to work, leaving Rude surrounded by even stranger versions of the auction. One customer says Seek won. Another says the Black Mage saved everyone. Others blame the tower for the explosion, insist Cloaca swallowed the stone whole, or whisper that the Black Mage is secretly a woman. Rude turns from the gossip to the public article and notices that none of it mentions the monsters. The tower may have removed that information. He briefly considers whether the barrier protecting the auction city failed, but a real failure would never produce such a quiet response. That leaves the purple circle. Rude copied its pattern in detail, yet every standard record has failed him, so he decides to take the drawing back to Master. Elsewhere, a pale-haired rider named Rispon travels beside an enclosed carriage and warns its passenger about a commotion ahead. The woman inside is Dana, and Rispon asks again whether she is certain about what she plans to do. Dana has answered him enough times. If it helps that child, even a little, I'll do anything. Rude is still studying the copied circle as he walks, but staring harder produces no miracle. Then the wind snatches the paper from his hands. His investigation becomes a sprint through the street as the sheet flies farther away and finally slaps into the face of a white-haired thief. The man has taken a stranger's bag and now calls it abandoned property, because the owner set it down for a moment. When the owner protests, the thief threatens to kill him before the guards arrive. While everyone is distracted, Rude takes the bag so quickly that no one sees him move and places it back in the owner's hands. The thief demands it back. Rude looks at him. I picked it up too. The owner escapes while the thief orders his companions to block Rude's path. He plans to teach this cheeky child how the world works, but Rude sees only a low-grade magic user and wants no part of another pointless fight. So our boy chooses peace. He runs. His pursuers barely finish shouting before Rude launches across the street and leaves them behind. Unfortunately, that escape sends him directly toward Dinah's moving carriage. Rude and Respawn notice each other 1 second before the impact shakes the compartment. Inside, Dina looks up. Rude steadies himself on the roof of the moving carriage. This carriage is really sturdy. The mounted escorts are still staring when he jumps off and tries to leave, but Rispin crosses the distance in an instant and places a sword against his neck. Fast, Rispin demands to know whose carriage Rude just stepped on. Rude does not know, though the armed escort makes it obvious that someone important is inside. Rather than turn this into another fight, our boy Bose admits he should not have landed there and promises to be more careful. The apology is so proper that Rispon lets him go. A brown-haired attendant inside the carriage immediately asks whether drawing a sword on a child was necessary. Rispin insists that an ordinary child could never land on a moving carriage so cleanly. At Rude's apparent age, Rispin was already defeating mid-tier monsters, so the attendant suggests taking this talented child as his disciple. If Rispin refuses, she can always recruit Rude into her magic troupe instead. Rispin shuts down both ideas. Dinah has watched the entire exchange from her seat. She agrees that the boy seemed strong, but his calm apology impressed her more. Once Rude disappears down the road, Rispon asks whether Dina was hurt. She is fine. This carriage is really sturdy. Since they are already close to their destination, Dana decides to walk the rest of the way. Rude watches the well-guarded group leave, and feels relieved that the accident ended without trouble. He expects that to be the last time he ever sees them. A short while later, he walks into Master's office and finds all three waiting for him. Master is meeting with a client, but he tells Rude to stay and presents him as one of Ophion's finest mages, newly ranked 7th tier despite his youth. Rude's face asks the obvious question, since when is he 7th tier? Master continues without giving him an answer, calling Rude a fledgling who can stand above the best mages of his age. Dana listens, then asks whether she can meet the Black Mage instead. Master claims the Black Mage is away on a mission, and Rude is the best mage currently available. The lie would be much easier to sell if the Black Mage were not standing beside him. Dina studies Rude for a moment, and recognizes him as the boy who landed on her carriage. She takes their second meeting as fate, and agrees to trust him. Rude has no idea what she wants, but Master finally introduces their client. She is Dina, the Duchess of Arshan. The Duchess turns to Rude. The reason I came to Ophion is because of my second child, who is currently attending Helios. Dina's second child is her second son, a boy who has spent only 1 month at Helios and is already being called a monster. Her brown-haired attendant Fran places the academy records and student reports before Ophion, while Dina explains the part that frightens her most. Once a student enrolls at Helios, outsiders cannot interfere or simply pull that student back out. Her son is trapped there, and Dina knows how easily he retreats into himself. While the family focused on his older brother, the younger boy learned to bury every wound alone, and Dina admits she noticed far too late. She will not ignore him again. Dina asks Ophion to protect her son and help him live peacefully at Helios. The moment the Duchess leaves, Rude turns toward Master and reminds him that he never accepted this mission. Master sees no problem. A Duchess asked Ophion for help, and Rude happens to be available. Our boy points out that Ophion still has an unexplained auction disaster to investigate, but Master promises to handle that himself because Rude needs to focus on school. School? Master slides an admission letter across the desk, confirming that Rude Chrissy, officially 15 years old, has passed the Helios basic test and been admitted. Rude reads the letter once, thanks Master for everything, and quits Ophion. Master catches him before he reaches the door. He cannot resign after Master spent so much effort raising him, caring for him, and occasionally feeding him. Rude points at the admission letter and asks why Master enrolled him without permission. The answer is obvious. If Master had asked, Rude would have said no. That is exactly the problem. Helios has nothing to teach him, and protecting one student does not require becoming another one. Master answers with love as deep as the ocean, which explains absolutely nothing. Their argument reaches Ren before Ren reaches the office. She walks in, tells both of them to sit, and confirms the worst part. She knew about the enrollment too. Ren admits that arranging it behind Rude's back was wrong, but Helios could give him a normal school life that Ophion never can. For once, he could rest, live among people near his public age, and make a few friends. Rude has no need for friends. Master changes tactics and offers to respect his choice. He will simply prepare a will in case refusing a personal request from the Duchess costs him his head. Ren stops the performance and gives Rude the real decision. The assignment could keep him at Helios for a long time, so he is free to refuse. Rude thinks about the frightened mother who came to Ophion and agrees to help her son. Master celebrates Ophion's rising star with enough enthusiasm to make Rude suspicious. He asks whether his uniform is ready. It is. His luggage? Packed. Rude considers resigning again. Master also reminds him that Helios only knows Rude Creasy, the young 7th tier mage presented to Dinah. The school does not know that he is a fully awakened certified mage, and the professors are certified mages themselves. Rude cannot reveal Blow or use his full power openly. Master proudly calls this a vacation for Black Mage Blow, and the first mission of Rude Creasy. With the argument settled, Rude studies the student records, and wonders how he is supposed to protect one lonely noble without beating half the academy. Then he finds a portrait of a silver-haired boy, with one purple eye visible beneath his bangs. Rude takes one look at that face and assumes he has found the bully. Master corrects him. The intimidating boy in the portrait is Leader Cis Dien Artian, the Duchess's second son. At the Helios delivery counter, Ben learns that the school will not accept his letters without an official certificate. His mother told him to leave his sister alone, but 10 letters are difficult to abandon, so Rude uses the certificate attached to his own luggage and asks the clerk to include Ben's bundle. One small favor gets every letter through the gate. Inside Helios, Professor Hale's Eden classroom waits for its late arrival, while rumor turns him into the first student in school history to earn a perfect entrance score. The same story says, a chronic illness kept him away for the opening month. Some students want to meet the genius, and one hopes friendship will improve his own grades. A pale-haired girl only wants everyone to lower their voices, while the blue-haired boy beside her sleeps through the excitement. The room falls silent when Littercease enters and takes his isolated seat. Someone mutters the word monster, and nobody goes near him. Rude has not reached the classroom yet, but he already knows every rumor about him is fake. Before leaving Ophion, he confronted Master about an exam he never took, and an illness he never had. Master proudly unveiled the cover he had prepared, a sickly genius pretty boy. Worse, the admission letter had been issued 1 month earlier, which meant Master planned to send Rude to Helios before Dinah ever visited Ophion. Our boy demanded to know why, and received no useful answer. A red-haired staff member pulls Rude from that memory, and leads him across a campus saturated with mana. Helios accepts students from different ages and social positions, but talent decides how far they climb. Every newcomer begins in Eden, the beginner class. Then, stronger students can advance through CLAD and reach Haze through the annual promotion exam. Admission alone guarantees nothing. The staff member warns that many students enter dreaming of greatness and leave broken when effort cannot carry them any farther, then asks what the first perfect scorer thinks about that. Rude gives the honest answer. If he tries and still cannot do it, he will quit. The man laughs and calls him cheerful. Rude does not correct him. He welcomes Rude to the school that trains mana-sensitive students until they can become true mages who bear the mark, then brings him into Hale's classroom under the chronic illness cover. After weeks of rumors, everyone expects a memorable introduction. Rude gives them 3 words. Nice to meet you. Silence. Someone asks whether that is all, and several others begin arguing over how old he looks. Rude ignores them. Across the room, the silver-haired boy from the portrait sits alone. Rude has found Leadersis. Rude does not rush toward Leadersis. The boy neither looks fragile nor acts wounded, and nobody has explained why the entire class calls him a monster. Until Rude understands the room, he plans to stay quiet and observe. Professor Hale sends him to the seat beside a blue-haired student who immediately calls him an ability user, and asks his age. The boy introduces himself as Dio Barus, 17 years old, and already certain that every classmate is his friend. Rude gives the age on his school record, 15. Hale cuts into the conversation long enough to remind everyone that Dio scored last on the entrance test. Dio asks why his new friend needed to hear that. Rude's plan to avoid attention survives until the next break. His classmates surround the mysterious perfect scorer and fire questions about his home, mentor, illness, and age until Rude tries to escape. Dio clears a path for him, and announces that Professor Hale gave him the exclusive honor of guiding Rude around Helios. A moment later, Dio has one arm around Rude's shoulders and is calling the tour a mission between friends. Rude still cannot remember agreeing to the friendship. As they cross the enormous campus, Dio admits that entering Helios was the proudest moment of his life. He is not a noble, so he believed acceptance proved his hard work had finally paid off. School has been less magical than the dream. Rude calls him impressive anyway. Out of every new student, Dio alone managed to finish dead last. Not everyone could accomplish that. Dio asks him to stop saying it with such a sincere face. Their tour reaches the Helios Central Library, where floating manospheres keep each study area silent. The building has 4 floors, but Eden students are restricted to the first. Dio calls it the sorrow of the lower class. Before he can continue, a long-haired blonde senior notices them. The Haze crest on his uniform marks him as one of the Academy's elite, but he is far more interested in the monster from Dio's class. Dio says the boy is fine. That's unfortunate. The senior walks away smiling, and Dio looks as if he has survived an execution. Rude asks why one upperclassman frightens him that much. Dio grabs his shoulders and begins the survival lesson he should have received on his first day. Fewer than 20 students stand in Haze among more than 400 at Helios, and Dio believes each of them can crush entire groups from the lower classes. Rude sees unawakened trainees. Dio sees stars in the sky. His first rule is never to oppose Haze. The second is to avoid the blonde senior, Chebby von Hedelion. Rude guesses that anyone inspiring this much terror must have a wonderful personality. Dio shushes him, checks the library around them, and lowers his voice to explain why Chebby frightens him so much. Dio says Chebby is the heir to the Hedelion Marquise family, a house influential enough that even professors hesitate to cross it. Students who anger Chebby are said to lose far more than a few class points. He keeps tormenting them until school becomes unbearable, and Dio points to Leadersis as the clearest example. Rude finally has a useful connection between Chebby and the monster label, but Dio refuses to spend the rest of their tour discussing miserable people. He throws an arm around his new friend and drags him through the remaining campus facilities. By evening, Rude has crossed enough of Helios to understand why Dio knows the school better than his textbooks. An auburn-haired dorm official meets him beside the luggage delivered that morning. Every available room in his class already has 2 students, so she offers him temporary lodging until a space opens. Rude points out the one exception. Leadersis has been living alone in a 2-person room. The official hesitates, then accepts Rude's earnest request, and warns him to return if the arrangement becomes uncomfortable. Rude has no intention of returning. Sharing Leadersis's room gives him the cleanest chance to learn what is happening. The suite is far larger and more luxurious than Rude expected, and Leadersis is already lying in one bed with his eyes closed. Rude tries to speak to him, gets no response, and begins unpacking instead. Behind him, one purple eye opens long enough to study the new roommate before closing again. That night, elsewhere in Helios, a teal-haired young man carrying books stops near a window as a broken exchange begins around him. The voices mention an urgent summons, the tower's eyes, and a contract that needs more time. Professor Hale arrives before the young man can learn more. The startled student insists a black shadow was standing there, but Hale sees nothing. While they speak, a dark mass slips across the room behind them, and an unseen voice promises that the contract will be fulfilled. Rude oversleeps the next morning and wakes to an empty bed. Lidersus spent the previous evening pretending to sleep whenever Rude spoke, then slipped out before Rude woke. The boy is more guarded than Dinah's report suggested. Outside the dorm, whispers follow Rude across campus. Everyone knows the perfect scorer personally requested to share a room with the monster, and no one knows why he chose it. Rude came to Helios hoping to observe quietly, but the entire school is already watching him. He walks toward the nearest whispering group and calls out, "Hey!" From the ledge above Helios's central corridor, Rude sees 3 male students dragging Lidersus through the crowd. Nearby students consider calling a professor, but this has happened before, and none of them wants to become the next target. The brown-haired aggressor forces Lidersus down and orders the monster to hide where nobody has to look at him. His friends pile on with rumors that the Archean family abandoned Lidersus, and that his older brother denies having a younger sibling. Lidersus remains silent while one attacker presses a foot onto his hand. A bystander whispers that one of the boys hurting him is Manon, but nobody steps forward. The brown-haired student starts bragging about standing on a duke's bloodline when a hardbound book strikes him in the head. Rude looks down from the ledge and asks whether he would mind returning it. Then our boy jumps. He lands on the green-haired attacker hard enough to drive him into the floor, and apologizes immediately. He thought he was landing on the ground. The remaining pale-haired boy attacks, but Rude catches his fist in one hand and throws him beside the others. These 3 are much weaker than Rude expected. Before he can check on Lidersus, the silver-haired boy runs. Rude calls after him, but Lidersus clutches the front of his own uniform and warns him not to come any closer. He must not. Lidersus disappears down the corridor before Rude can ask why. The next day, students stop whispering long enough to stare when Rude passes. Our boy searches the campus for Lidersus until Dio grabs him and pulls him into a storage room. Dio nearly asks whether Rude is truly sharing a room with that monster, catches himself, and changes the last part to Prince Arshan. The correction arrives too late to hide what he thinks. Dio urges Rude to move out before his school life is ruined. The monster Chebi mentioned in the library was Lidersus, and Dio says Chebi has marked him so completely that most students would rather join the abuse than attract Haze. Rude draws one conclusion from the warning. Chebi is at the center of it. He asks Dio a simpler question. Does someone leading the cruelty make it right for everyone else to call Lidersus a monster and look away? Outside the storage room, Lidersus stops when he hears his name. Dio admits that no, Lidersus does not deserve any of it. Rude turns toward the stacked crates and asks whether Lidersus agrees, nearly making Dio jump when the silver-haired boy steps out from behind the boxes. Lidersus tries to leave at once and warns that anyone who stays near him will suffer the same treatment. Rude catches the back of his jacket and asks for one proper conversation, but Lidersus pulls free and walks away. Dio watches him go and renews his request for a different roommate. Rude is more interested in the warning. Why is Lidersus so certain that everyone near him will be hurt? As Lidersus walks alone, the word monster follows him through the halls and drags a broken memory behind it. A child cries beside a long-haired person lying on the ground, while an unidentified dark-haired man accuses Lidersus of making her die. Back in the storage room, Rude asks how the monster rumor began. Dio only knows the story passed around Eden. Not long after Lidersus enrolled, students gathered in the library, and rumor says he transformed into a monster inside. The problem is that nobody agrees on what they saw. One version gives Lidersus a third eye and thick fur, while another gives him 8 arms. Even Dio knows both stories cannot be true, but the library remained closed for several days afterward, and the entire school treated Lidersus differently when it reopened. Rude calls the transformation stories nonsense. Dio agrees. Yet he still wants Rude to move before Haze notices how closely they are connected. Rude asks whether Dio will avoid him too. Dio cannot answer, but Rude already knows his friend is not that kind of person. As they leave the storage room, students watch them from every direction. Changing rooms will not make Rude invisible again, so Dio asks the question he has been dreading. Is Rude planning to oppose Haze? Rude pauses long enough to make Dio sweat. Of course not. The delay makes the answer useless. Dio asks why Rude cares so much about Lidersus. Protecting the Duchess's son is an Ophian request, but Rude has also seen what happens when a wounded child is left alone and called a monster. He will not join the crowd pretending not to notice. Before Dio can escape this decision, Rude calls him back and announces that they are already in the same boat. Friends, Dio looks betrayed by his own favorite word. Together, they ask nearby students to move and carry their desks into the empty space beside Leader Sis. The Artian name should have protected him from open cruelty, yet Leader Sis refuses to use it or defend himself. Rude still does not know why. Leader Sis looks over in surprise as Rude takes the seat beside him. Professor Hale begins class with an old description of mages preserved in books left by ancient kings. Those records called them God's messengers, saviors who purified tainted lands and destroyed monsters. Hale says the title has lost some meaning now that people can obtain marks through dishonest methods and awaken without being ready. But one fact has not changed. Only mages have the power to stand against monsters. While the lesson continues, Rude whispers Leader Sis's name and receives no answer. He tries again until Dio interrupts with enough urgency to suggest an attack on the school. Dio is hungry, and he drags Rude to the cafeteria while Leader Sis stays behind. Once food is within reach, Dio admits that hunger was not the real emergency. Sitting beside Leader Sis has already cost him most of his friends, and two people cannot change Eden while the student they are defending refuses to speak with them. Rude remembers Leader Sis holding an upside-down book during class. The boy noticed them, even if he pretended otherwise. Dio points toward the friends who laughed with him yesterday and now refuse to meet his eyes. Rude smiles and says he can still see them. Eyesight was not Dio's concern. He wants to turn back while they still can, but Rude reaches the opposite conclusion. If two friends are not enough, they need more. Dio opens his mouth to correct him as several male students enter the cafeteria looking for Rude Creasy. Their leader is Manon, the tall-clad student Rude saw beside Chebi. Manon leads Rude and a nervous Dio into the courtyard, then orders his own companions away. He expects Rude to know why he was summoned. Rude does not. Manon called him out, so expecting Rude to supply the reason feels unfair. That answer earns him a long stare. Manon stops circling the subject and orders him to quit approaching Leader Sis. He wants to know whether Rude is acting from pity or playing at friendship for entertainment, because either reason will end with Rude suffering beside the person he is trying to help. Rude asks whether this is friendly advice. Manon leans closer. No, this is a warning. At sunset, Dio asks whether Manon's warning changed Rude's mind. It did not. Rude wants the truth behind the library incident before deciding what to do about Chebi, and the fastest way to get it is one proper conversation with Leader Sis. Dio can search for classmates willing to help them, while Rude finds the boy who keeps running away. Leader Sis is not in the classroom, or their room. While Rude searches, the silver-haired boy sits inside a book-lined office with an elderly Helios woman. She asks whether anything is wrong with his school life, reminds him of her connection with Daner, and invites him to speak freely. Leader Sis insists that nothing is wrong, and the woman cannot help someone who refuses to ask. Out in the hallway, Rude receives the same treatment from the students he questions. One boy denies seeing Leader Sis and escapes before Rude can ask where he last saw him, while the others whisper about the monster and avoid eye contact. A silver-haired girl carrying books finally steps forward. She saw Leader Sis walking toward Western Storage with a box of manospheres. Rude thanks her and turns to leave, but several boys immediately question why she spoke to someone connected with Leader Sis. If that choice becomes dangerous, they would be happy to protect her. Rude turns back. He is not searching for a monster. He is searching for Leader Sis. The girl watches him leave and murmurs that he is funny. Rude reaches an upper walkway overlooking the route to Western Storage and finds Leader Sis below with the sphere box in his arms. Manon's warning crosses his mind as students fill the courtyard between them, but our boy ignores it and shouts every part of Leader Sis Diane Artian's name. The entire courtyard looks up. Leader Sis sees Rude waving and runs. Rude tells him to wait, gets the opposite result, and vaults over the stone railing. He lands in a burst of dust and races after Leader Sis before the watching students can recover. A purple-haired girl asks her green-haired classmate Ren whether she saw that jump. Ren can only stare at the walkway Rude just abandoned. That kid jumped from there. Leader Sis sprints across the Helios grounds with Rude close behind, drawing students from every direction toward the chase. Rude can worry about the audience after he catches him, but Leader Sis is faster than expected and refuses to lose ground. Still running, he touches one of the spheres inside the box. Purple-white mana lifts several spheres into the air, and one shoots backward into Rude's forehead hard enough to break his stride. Not bad. Leader Sis glances back, apologizes, and stops far enough away to feel safe. Rude points out that apologies mean very little when the person giving them keeps running. Leader Sis says he ran because Rude chased him, only for Rude to remind him that he started running first. When Rude mentions calling his name, Leader Sis insists he cannot hear a thing. Rude tests that excuse by calling him again, much louder. Their argument pauses when Chebi von Hedelian approaches with several students. Rude keeps his eyes on Leader Sis and promises not to come any closer, allowing the silver-haired boy to relax by one careful breath. Then, Rude bends down, throws a loose sphere toward his face, and rushes forward when Leader Sis ducks. One hand catches the front of Leader Sis's uniform before he can run again. Now they can talk. Leader Sis grips another sphere but does not attack, so Rude loosens his hold and explains that he wants nothing more complicated than one honest conversation. Leader Sis stares at him, as if the word itself is unfamiliar. His visible eye suddenly widens. Chebby has walked up behind them and planted a boot against Leader Sis's upper back. He mocks Rude for trying to speak with a monster and starts calling Leader Sis a thing. Rude's kick ends the sentence and launches Chebby across the grass. Leader Sis's box overturns during the clash, scattering monospheres around them, but Chebby rises with a smile and compliments Rude's bad habit of kicking people. Rude ignores him, rests a hand on Leader Sis's head, and suggests they continue somewhere quiet. Chebby steps beside them and places his own hand on Rude's head before either boy can leave. Do you have a death wish? Rude would prefer to live, and removing the hand from his head would make that much easier. Chebby demands to know whether this little Eden student understands who he is. Of course Rude does, though after saying Chebby Vaughn, he pauses and asks what comes next. Then he skips the missing surname and calls him the incredibly amazing Haze upperclassman. Chebby's expression tightens as Rude removes his hand and sends it back to its owner. Enough games. Chebby calls for Anna, and a faceted purple gem attached to a long chain flies into his palm as purple-blue mana gathers around the stone. Rude recognizes a high-grade magic stone and studies it with more interest than fear. Chebby misreads his silence and orders the cocky brat to watch the magic of a future grand mage. Behind him, two students agree that someone should fetch a professor, but each believes the other person should go. Their argument interrupts the threat until Chebby shouts both of them quiet and raises the chain stone. Ramael, Cruz, Felperica. The spoken spell pulls more mana around him, and Rude decides the confrontation has gone far enough. Before he can leave, Leader Sis reaches for his shoulder, tells him to move away, and steps between Rude and Chebby to face the spell alone. Chebby finds the sight adorable. Leader Sis has finally found one brat willing to care about him. Leader Sis insists Rude has nothing to do with their conflict, but Chebby silences him with a burst of purple magic that drives him to the ground. He does not want a clean victory. He wants Leader Sis trapped inside the memory he fears most. Chebby spreads one hand across Leader Sis's face and covers the visible eye with purple light. Helios vanishes from Leader Sis's sight, replaced by a brown-haired girl in a white dress who offers him a pale flower and asks whether it is pretty. The memory changes, covering the girl's forehead and face with blood as black and red shapes rise behind her. Red eyes open inside the darkness, followed by a mouth packed with teeth, and Leader Sis begs the memory to stop. Rude tackles Chebby away and drops beside him, but Chebby rises furious that the Eden brat touched him again. Rude demands to know what he did. Chebby says Leader Sis forgot his sins, so he forced him to remember. A beast that rampages without knowing its place must be punished. And now Chebby turns the same judgment toward Rude. The Eden brat does not know his place either, so you'll have to be punished too. Chebby offers to drag out any memory Rude never wants to relive, or create any terror he never wants to face. Rude recognizes illusion magic and connects it to the library incident. Chebby made the students see Leader Sis as a monster. Chebby mistakes his silence for fear, but Rude has reached a different conclusion. This guy needs to be dealt with. Professor Kim rushes onto the grounds before either of them can move, and orders Chebby to stop. He clicks his tongue, tells the Eden brat to count himself lucky, and leaves her to check Rude and Leader Sis. Rude says nothing about the illusion, because he first wants to learn what happened between Chebby and the boy still shaking beside him. By the next day, Helios has turned the confrontation into several better stories. Professor Hale summons Rude and asks whether he launched himself from a high ledge and chased Leader Sis across school like a mad cow. Rude denies both accusations while two witnesses outside the office whisper that they saw everything. Hale trusts the public record describing a frail child with a chronic illness and warns him not to destroy his health by fighting Haze. Rude accepts the protection of Master's ridiculous cover and leaves. Dio soon arrives with an even stranger version. The school now believes Rude and Prince Archon were happily playing tag until Chebby caught Rude and destroyed him. Dio checks Rude for injuries, then panics when Rude says Leader Sis is the person they should worry about. No, Leader Sis is not dead. Once Dio recovers, they search the classroom, infirmary, and storage rooms until they find him sitting behind a wall of crates. Rude asks whether he came there to dig a hole and receives nothing but silence, so he offers Leader Sis a piece of candy. That also fails. Fine. Rude asks why Chebby keeps calling him a monster. Leader Sis says the name does not matter and orders Rude to stop caring, stay away, and leave him alone. Does Leader Sis intend to live like this forever? Yes. Then he says the part he has avoided. I really am a monster. Rude accepts the answer and leaves the candy beside him. If Leader Sis will not explain, Rude can ask Chebby instead. The name makes Leader Sis look up, but Rude tells him not to worry. He is only curious, and his curiosity has nothing to do with leadership. Hearing his own excuse return to him leaves the silver-haired boy without an answer. On an ornate terrace elsewhere in Helios, a long red-haired girl reports everything Chebi has learned about Rude, the chronic illness cover, perfect entrance score, shared room with Lidersis, and constant company of Dio Barus. Chebi does not believe the illness because a frail child should not be able to tackle him across the ground. He decides to teach Rude never to climb above his place again. The chained purple gem rests on the table as black smoke leaks from its surface, gathers into a human-like shadow, and slips through the nearby foliage. At another railing, Tessiana pauses after sensing a disturbance. The princess calls Tessie over to inspect the food on her table, and her attendant scolds the princess for playing with it. The title princess is supposed to be secret here. She protests that everyone still calls Lady Tessiana by her nickname, but the attendant corrects that too. At Helios, Tessiana is Professor Lowell. That night, Rude opens a wooden box on a quiet rooftop and speaks to Master through the glowing blue crystal inside. Master wants to know whether he has made friends. Rude wants to know whether Ophion should abandon the assignment. Lidersis refuses help. Rude believes Chebi is driving the abuse, and the rest of Helios repeats the monster story, without asking whether it is true. Master ignores the word withdraw, and focuses on the Hedelian name. The family has produced powerful mages for generations, and its current head, Marquis Hedelian, is one of the central nobles in the imperial city. He is also a famous rival of the Duke of Artian. Master wonders whether the father's feud reached their sons, but Rude sees no feud. Chibi attacks, and Lidersis accepts it. Master offers two other possibilities involving a stolen girlfriend, or a lost treasure. Rude tells him that living such a simple life must be pleasant. Master laughs, promises to investigate both families, and reminds Rude that school should involve more than one work request. He finds several new ways to say make friends before Rude closes the box. For now, Rude will watch Chebi and Lidersis more closely. Far across the sea, daylight covers a residence built into a rocky island. An orange-haired man in a purple suit reaches the balcony and criticizes Ruby Monter's choice of home, taste, and temper, before singing that her little cutie Elzabel has arrived. Ruby is away, leaving a large pink creature with one eye and too many teeth to greet him. The human realm has been entertaining, but the creature wants to know whether Elzabel truly crossed the sea by swimming. He did, and the water was full of creatures that looked just like his host. The pink creature tells him that he reeks of seawater. Elzabel finds that bold, coming from someone with its face. Ruby ordered him to remain in human form until he becomes accustomed to it, but staying inside feels suffocating. Elzabel offers fresh air, grabs his companion, and throws him from the cliff like a prize catch. The pink body crashes into the sea. A long magenta-haired humanoid erupts from the water in its place, and Elzabel greets him as Gamad. Gamad threatens to kill him. Elzabel responds by suggesting a human name. Creatures like Gamad are called fish here, so fish should work perfectly. Gamad's answer is shorter, just die. Water surges toward the cliff, and Elzabel retreats before it reaches him. The same small horned figure who watched the Radin disaster orders both of them to behave, then opens a report confirming that someone has successfully infiltrated Helios Special Magic School. Everything is moving smoothly. Back at Helios, an unnamed staff woman searches for Professor Lowell and finds Professor Hale beside a complex teleportation array. Lowell has not been seen that day. The woman studies the layered formation and the tall golden crystal at its center, then asks whether Hale built the entire array for Eden's upcoming field practice. He did. This year, Hale plans to connect the formation to a training room inside the tower. The Helios staff woman becomes even more impressed when she mentions Li Dongjin and praises Hale for being his master. Hale answers with an uneasy laugh. This is Eden's first practical training of the year, and he wants every detail ready before the students enter the tower. Over in Eden, Dio drops a notebook onto Rude's desk. It contains every potential ally he could find in one day, though most students avoided him the moment he mentioned Lidersis or Chebi. Rude asks whether anyone on the list can stand against Haze. Dio has two promising names. The first is Uchirburn Maria Conciol, the only royal attending Helios, and a direct-line princess. An imperial castle guardian accompanies her with the school's permission, which makes even the professors careful around her. If Rude wants someone Chebi cannot casually threaten, the princess is a strong choice. Dio explains all of this at full classroom volume before checking whether anyone heard him. Rude says no. Every student sitting nearby heard him. The second candidate is more familiar. Lapis Yuan Nuadli, the blonde noble Rude met during the Raiden disaster, is the current Duke Nuadli's only son and heir. He and Chebi entered Helios together, and once had a terrible relationship. Though these days they ignore each other. Lapis ranks near the top in magical theory but struggles badly with practical magic, which has kept him in Eden. A popular ducal heir with an old reason to dislike Chebi is still worth approaching. Rude thanks Dio for the work. Dio wanted a Harry's candidate too, But that class is so isolated that learning where its students gather proved impossible. Chabi wandering through the lower classes is the exception. Before Dio can add more, 2 clad students enter the room with a message supposedly sent by Professor Ubanos. Regular lessons are cancelled, and every student in Hale's class must report to the East Grand Lecture Hall for field training preparation. As the class leaves, Rude notices that Littersis is missing. Elsewhere, Littersis sits drenched beside an overturned bucket, while the same 3 students mock him as a wet rat and monster prince. Manon stops them, not because the abuse bothers him, but because today has a different purpose. One companion leans close and whispers that they should bring the monster. Manon smiles. The stage is apparently ready. Rude and Dio search the dormitory, storage room, and Littersis's usual hiding places before heading to the lecture hall. Dio insists that the prince is alive somewhere, while another absence penalty will murder his class points. Rude follows, but Littersis was present that morning and vanished before the staged lesson began. At the East Grand Lecture Hall, Hale's students fill the seats, clad students guard the front, and no professor is present. Manon stands among them. Once a subordinate confirms that every important student has arrived, Manon faces the room. Let's get started. Back in Eden, an older instructor enters Hale's abandoned classroom and finds every desk empty. Where did everyone go? The main entrance to the East Grand Lecture Hall is locked, but Dio knows a secret passage with one small problem. They have to crawl. Inside, Manon stands before Hale's class with carts of dark green mana orbs and calls the gathering a special lesson. Students who have not awakened as full mages still need mana stored inside stones or other objects to cast magic. These test orbs cannot produce spells, but feeding mana into one changes its color and brightness, allowing Manon to judge how much force each Eden student can transmit through it. A nervous student asks whether Professor Hale approved this lesson. The clad guards step closer, and the question disappears. Manon turns their attention toward the real test. Littersis is chained upright against the center of a reinforced target board, and every student must activate an orb and throw it at him. Anyone who strikes the head will receive extra points. Manon scatters the spheres across the floor and asks for a volunteer, but one of his people rushes over first. He's gone. Littersis is still bound in plain sight, and the unexplained warning sends Manon's plan into panic. From the passage, Dio tells Rude they need a professor and crawls back the way they came while Rude keeps watching. Manon refuses to stop after bringing the operation this far, even though Chebi was never told about it. A short purple-haired clad student takes charge of the test and selects a frightened brown-haired girl. She refuses to throw, so he calmly offers to tie her to the target instead. The girl takes an orb, but activating it produces barely any color, and her throw misses both Littersis and the board. Her examiner disqualifies her before an orange-haired clad student demonstrates what the group expects. His sphere shines bright green and tears past Littersis's head before striking the floor. Littersis flinches as the clads praise the throw and ask who wants to follow. Rude has seen enough. One hand rises among the silent Eden students. The purple-haired examiner turns toward him, and Rude looks at Littersis. Me, I'll give it a try. Manon recognizes Rude and accepts his volunteer, but our boy launches a test orb before he can finish adding another condition. The sphere passes Littersis and bores a wide circular hole through the reinforced board, silencing the entire hall. Manon could barely scratch that surface during practice, but Rude studies the damage and calmly says, he missed. The impact loosens Littersis's restraints enough for him to move. Rude picks up a second orb, promises to hit the target this time, and fills the sphere with mana until it glows. It shatters in his hand before he can throw. Rude laughs and calls it defective, while several students shout that a direct shot could kill someone. He is already holding another sphere. This time, Rude warns Littersis to dodge. The green-white orb leaves his hand, Littersis moves, and Manon catches the shot with his face before dropping in front of the entire hall. Oops! Rude walks toward Littersis and asks why Manon stood in the way. Dio watches from the passage with open admiration, while the unnamed silver-haired Eden girl quietly repeats Rude's name. Manon rises and studies the impossible hole, the nearly white mana, and the Eden student responsible for both. Whatever trick he expected to find, the ruined target is real, and Littersis is no longer standing in front of it. They need a replacement. Rude suggests the orange-haired demonstrator, then offers the clad students standing together, since they enjoy doing everything as a pack. Nobody accepts either choice. Fine, why not use the person who prepared this lesson? Rude asks Manon whether that sounds fun, and Manon's patience finally breaks. If Rude wants another target, Manon will give the hall one. He points at Rude Chrissy and orders every student present to grab him. Dio starts crawling forward to help, but a hand catches him from behind. The blue-haired woman standing in the passage is Professor Lowell. Professor Lowell stops Dio before he can rush into the hall and asks what he is doing. Watching, Dio answers. So Lowell tells him to keep watching. When he tries to protest, she covers his mouth and focuses on Rude. Manon's students surround our boy before he can reach another test orb, believing sheer numbers have finally trapped him. That confidence lasts less than a second. Rude strikes the nearest attacker, tears through the opening, and kicks another student clear of the group. He remains standing in the space they thought they had closed, and asks everyone not to test his patience while he is already angry. Manon wants to answer with a real spell, but his people brought only non-spell test spheres. Since spellcasting is unavailable, he promises a generous reward to anyone who can land one clean hit on Rude. Being outnumbered should still decide the fight. Manon fills a green orb with mana and throws it at Rude's face, but Litursis steps into its path. The sphere slams into his upper chest in a burst of green light. Rude demands to know why he blocked it, and Litursis answers with silence. Manon calls him a monster, orders everyone to take the remaining orbs, and tells them to attack both boys. Green spheres rise throughout the hall, as Rude asks whether Litursis enjoys being hit or bullied. Litursis denies it at once. Good, the orb was never aimed at him, so why protect Rude? Litursis admits that he believes every person hurt near him is suffering because of him, and he refuses to let that happen again. Another glowing sphere cuts toward them before Rude can answer. He catches it in one hand and faces the students preparing to throw. Litursis is wrong about one thing. This fight is not happening because of him. I just don't like those people. Manon's side answers with a storm of green orbs, but their aim falls apart the moment Rude moves. He slips between the first shots, drives one attacker into the floor, turns another student's throw aside, and drops everyone close enough to reach him. Rude starts counting bodies. 1, 2, 3, 4. Soon, the exact number becomes difficult to follow. Litursis remains in the middle of the hall, with his hands tied behind him, which is a terrible place to stand while Rude is clearing it. The green-haired Eden student Ren notices blood at Litursis' mouth, and finally sees the thick rope around his wrists. She crosses the hall, loosens the binding, and apologizes as the rope falls away. Rude drops another attacker and updates his count to 11, or perhaps 12. Manon stares at the students already on the floor, unable to believe what he sees. Rude walks toward those still standing and asks, "Shall we continue?" Nobody accepts. Ren turns from Litursis toward the Eden students who watched the entire lesson. Her dark-haired friend calls her back, but Ren refuses to stay silent. She admits that she also stood aside, then asks why everyone keeps treating Litursis as a monster when he has done nothing to them. Are they so frightened of Clad and Haze that they will help torment one classmate? Those classes cannot retaliate against every Eden student together. Another attacker flies across the hall before Ren finishes and crashes near the group. Manon threatens that Lord Chebi will punish Rude and Litursis for this. Rude is tired of hearing the same word from people who refuse to look at themselves. Litursis stands alone and accepts every attack, while Manon's group surrounds him, binds him, and turns him into a target. Rude meets Manon's eyes. "It's you." Dio rushes toward Rude as another green mana orb crosses the hall. Rude slips aside, and the sphere strikes Manon squarely in the head, dropping him before the woman who threw it reaches them. Rude recognizes Professor Lowell as Tessiana, the swordswoman who fought Seek at the auction. Several students relax when a professor finally enters the hall, only for Lowell to ask Rude why he dodged. She insists he could have blocked that orb, and avoiding it made the test boring. Their relief disappears when she lifts another sphere and tells Rude not to move. Rude tries to stop her, but Lowell throws anyway. Professor Hale and two other adults burst through the doors before the second test can continue. Hale demands to know what Lowell is doing, while the dark-haired woman beside him looks from the cracked target to the students scattered across the floor. Lowell answers with one innocent word. "What?" The staff calls for the medical team and sends every student back to class. Lowell remains in the hall, watching Rude leave with a green orb still in her hand. Later, an unidentified purple-haired student sits beside Lapis and ignores his request to return to their own part of Helios. The visitor has found a baby Whoopie during solo practice and cannot believe the tiny creature will grow into a frightening mid-tier monster. Lapis hears a very obvious excuse to brag about training alone. The Black Mage admirer laughs and asks what actually happened when Lapis met the man himself. Lapis lowers his voice and insists that they crossed paths by chance and nothing more. That will not satisfy someone who wants every detail, from the Black Mage's personality and interests to the food and clothes he prefers. The admirer has already sent several nomination requests to Aphian, only for the student's master to reject every one. Lapis asks what could inspire this much effort. The Black Mage is the admirer's goal, and the person they respect most. One chance encounter would be enough. Elsewhere, far from Helios, Blow is crossing a dark forest with Ophian's Ren and several companions. Ren complains about the mission and promises to give Master an earful when they return, then notices Blow beside her and asks whether he is hurt. Blow answers without slowing, "No, I'm fine."